Hello, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, doctor. Clearly.
Okay, thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Very good afternoon, all students here. Welcome back to the semester. I hope that you enjoy your holiday, and I hope your families and all relatives are fine. So today we will continue our topics, which is about inheritance. But before that, I would like to remind you, next Tuesday, 25th of May, we have the skill-based test. You already know about the time. It will be take home. You have around 2 hours to do it. So it will be two parts. The first part will be problem solving. So it's very similar to programming technique 1, the final and skill-based test. So the second part will be about debugging. This is just a gentle reminder for you. I hope you will be ready. It will cover all chapters up to chapter 6, which is about the composition. Chapter 6 or 7, I'm not sure, but it is the composition. All right. So any question before we start inheritance? Inheritance is not included in the test. Do you have any question before I start my lecture? Okay. So today we will start a new topic, which is important in this subject, which is about inheritance. So basically, we have last time we have covered the concept of composition, aggregation, and association. So association is the highest relationship between two classes. You can link them with association. Then we have the aggregation, which is customized version of relationship. When you have some kind of dependency, you can see there is a parent and child, but of course it's different from the inheritance. But we have some relationship between the money and the wallet. So you can see that the wallet has a money, but maybe you have a money without wallet, so the dependency is weak. We have another version of relationship, which is the composition. Composition is different. We have a strong relationship. Both the parent and child must be exist. It's very similar to the body and the heart. Without the heart, the body will be destroyed. Of course, uh, if we don't have the body, you cannot have the heart. So it's strong relationship. One is the parent and the second one is the child. So it is composition. It's the highest, it's the strongest relationship. But here, inheritance is different. We have really some kind of parent and child. So it's more related to each other. We say we have a student, we have two kind of students. We have postgraduate student and undergraduate students. So this is not a composition. This is some kind of inheritance. We have some common of uh, generic attributes. So both postgraduate students and undergraduate students must have ID, name, and so on. We have some common attributes. So this is the concept of inheritance. It's different from the composition. Composition, we are talking about the components, some parts. We have a vehicle. This vehicle contains engine. We have the wheel. So it's some kind of components that will combine together to make this object, the entire body. You can call it, it is the body that contains these objects. So this is composition, but inheritance is different. When you have some common attributes exist in the parent and the child. So Inheritance provide a way to create a new class. So with the concept of inheritance, you can create from the parent class or super class, you can call it, you can create a subclass or child class or derived class. So you can create a new class. So this is the main characteristics of inheritance. So the new class, why we are creating a new class? Because it is a specialized version of the parent class or existing class. So classes organized into, so we have some kind of layers or levels. You have the parent, you have the child, you can make it multi-level of inheritance. So we have the hierarchy is there. So classes can inherit attributes. So when you are talking about attributes, you are talking about the private section, maybe is public section, but we have some kind of features and methods from. So all these attributes and methods in the parent class will be inherited by or be used by the child class. So the child class now can access or can have the attributes and methods in the parent, plus we have to add some other special attributes to the child. All right, so generalization, we have the concept of generalization. So this is the benefits of inheritance. You can make sharing of commonly used features. You can combine them in the parent class. So this is generalization, we call it. If you have find some attributes common between two classes, you can create the generalized class or the parent class. So we have the specialization, it's the opposite of the generalization. We have the extension of this class. We want to add another attributes and methods for existing class. So this is specialization, we call it. When you go from the parent to the child, so when you go from the parent to child, this is specialization, we call it. You will add another functionalities and attributes. When you go from the child to the parent, we call it generalization. You have to find what common attributes between this child 1, we have child 2, we have child 3, we have child 4. Then you will generalize into a parent class. You have to find what's the common attributes and methods, then you will generalize as shown here. All right, so this is the inheritance, the benefits of inheritance. You can go up, generalization. You can go down, specialization. Okay, so generalization also applies in encapsulation. A class is generalization of an object sharing the same structure. However, each object has different data, of course. If you have student class, this is student class, then we have two child class, we have postgraduate students, and we have undergraduate students. All right. So now this is class. When you have object, this is object. This is my class, uppercase, and the object is lowercase. So this is object of type undergraduate students. And I have another object here, which is B in small letter. So this is object of type postgraduate students. So now for the concept of encapsulation, for example, all students have the same structure. Each of them has its own name. So meaning that this class with the name, if I make it b.name, name is L. So this is u.name, dot, name is u, for instance. So now you have some kind of protection on the data for the object. So you see here, each of them has a name. The student is a class, so this is the class student here. But the objects now, we have object B and object U has unique name. So it's some kind of protection. All right, so this is the concept of encapsulation. You can protect the object, the attributes, the values. You can protect the values of the object. So specialization objects are specific entities from the same class with their own data. Of course, with object, you have object 1, you have undergraduate student 1, we have undergraduate student 2, the name of this student equal U2. So of course, these objects, each object has its own data. So it's still protected. You cannot change. This is different object from this one. Each one will have its own data. All right, so this is example here of inheritance. We have the superclass is insect. So all insects have certain characteristics. This is the superclass. We have some features here, which are common between these two childs. But here we have some characteristics, some attributes which are different from child 2. This is child 2, this is the parent here, and this is child 1. So in addition to the common insect characteristics, these are the common attributes here, which are exist here and here, maybe the name, whatever. So we have the bee has its own unique characteristics, such as the ability to sting. All right, so the bee is different from the grasshopper here. The bee can sting, but the grasshopper also is different from the bee, where it has the ability to jump. Okay, so we have some common characteristics and we have some unique characteristics. So unique things will become in the child class, and common things will come to, you have to generalize to the parent class. So when you design your project, you have to find what's the common attributes, and you have to use the concept of inheritance. All right, so generalization insects represent all of the generic attributes and methods shared by bee and grasshopper. So both bee and grasshopper are insect, but we have some specialization. Bee is specialized version of insect, which is different from grasshopper. Also, grasshopper is another specialized version of insect, which is different from the bee. So the terminology you have to use with inheritance, you have to call the parent class as a basic class. You can call it as a basic class, or parent class, or superclass. So all three terms used with the parent class. For the child class, you can call it derived class, or child class, or subclass. So this is the class which inherits some of its attributes and methods from another class. So the basic class or the parent class represents general characteristics shared by the derived class. So derived class here. So inheritance established as is a relationship. So you have to say here a B is. So this is in the composition we have has relationship, but in the case of inheritance we have is relationship. So you can see here B is an insect. is so this is the relationship between the classes is all right. So here we have a car is so this is the relationship is a vehicle. So car, which is this child, is a vehicle. Also here the truck is a vehicle. So both of them are vehicles. So vehicle is the parent class. Car and truck are the derived class or the or the child class. So we have the relationship is which link the child come first, is this is the superclass comes after. So vehicle is the base class or parent class. Car and truck are the derived class or the child class or subclass. All right, so this is just the concept of inheritance and terminologies used in inheritance. So vehicle represents all the generic attributes and methods of the vehicle. Here we have, it's the same example previously. So grasshopper is also an insect. Insect is the basic class, and bee and grasshopper are the derived class. Okay. So insect represent all of generic attributes and methods of any insect. We have another example here, which is student. We have two kinds of students. We have undergraduate and postgraduate students. So student can be undergraduate student or postgraduate student. The base class is the student. So this is the parent. And derived class, we have child 1. This is C1. This is C2. It is a class, not object. So we have class undergraduate here and class postgraduate here. You can see in the notations here, for UML, you have to be careful about the using appropriate notations. So you have these notations to indicate the inheritance. So in UML, you have to use this triangle, filled triangle, to indicate the inheritance of the classes. But here you have to be careful when you insert here the attributes. For instance, you have the name here. So I have the name here. What else? I have the ID of the student. So in UML, there is no need to say again, I have a name, I have ID, I have a name, I have ID. This is wrong because already you have the inheritance, already automatically those attributes will be included here and here. So what you have to do here, you have to add what's the difference between postgraduate and undergraduate. Maybe undergraduate, they have their own cumulative GPA, but postgraduate have something different here. But both attributes here are exist here and here. So there is no need to repeat these attributes here. Okay, so you have to be careful. Don't make duplicate the same attributes because we have the inheritance already there. So now this is in UML, but in the coding here, how we can implement this in the coding, you have to start with the base class, which is simple class like any other class. You have to start with class keyword, the name of the class, and you have to put here the attributes and methods. This is the simple one, the standard one. Then you have the derived class here. So we have the first class, which is undergraduate here. So you can see here, I will start with the keyword class, then the name of the class, which is similar to here. After that, I have to use the colon. Then I have to use the accessibility. Is it public or private or protected? Then I have to mention who is the parent class. So this is the parent class here. I have to use the name of the parent class. All right, so again, you have to use the class name first, then you have to use the colon, then you have to identify the accessibility. Is it private or public or protected? We have three kind of accessibility. Then you have to mention which is the super class or the parent class. So you have to mention the name. All right, this is the same here. This is the name of the class. Then we have to use the colon. We have to identify the accessibility. Then we have to mention the parent class. All right, this is in the coding. Okay, so UML notation for inheritance. This is the coding here. Okay. Any question right now about the notations of inheritance? How to use it in UML and in the coding? Okay, so we will continue. So what does a child have now when you have the inheritance? What exists in the child? So an object of the derived class, if you have an object of the child, so what can be accessed by this child? So you can access all members defined in the child class, plus you can access all members of the parent class. Okay, so an object of the derived class can use or access to public members defined in the child plus public members defined in the parent. This is object. You have to differentiate between object and class. When you say the class, from the class, what you can access is different from when you say by the object, how you can access the attributes and methods through the object. All right, so now we have the protected members and class access. So why we are using protected members here? Protected members access specifier like private, but accessible by derived class. This is because if you have a private attributes here, in this example here, if you have this one is private. So you have object here. I have an object from this class. So it is undergraduate. So object one. All right, so this is object one. So now this is private. Can I say object one dot name? This will be wrong because what? Because it's private. So I have another object here. I have from the class student, I have object student, object S. This is object U. Okay, so the same thing here. Can I say object student dot name from the main? Now I'm in the main here, in the main program. Okay, in the main method here, this is the main. Can I say object dot name, object student here, dot name, the name is private. This is not accessible. What you have to do, you have to make it public. This should be public, right? So now you can say object s dot name, this is correct. Object u here, this is the undergraduate object dot name, this is also true. Okay, this point is clear. This must be public, but from inside the class, assuming that this is getter here, this is the method here, void getter, get name. Okay, I can see inside this code, I can see out the name. If this is private here, this is private here. You can access from the class. So this is access from class. This is access by class. I don't have object dot name. I say name directly. And this is private here. So you can see that I can access from the class, by the class. But by object here, you cannot access. All right? So here, if inside the class here, I have a method get name modifier, can I say cout name? This is private. So I'm in the shell inside the class. Can I say cout name? Any answer about this question?
No.
No. So if I change here to another another accessibility, I call it protected here. So this is protected now. So my first question, can I say here in the main, this is the main program here, through object, I'm using the object. Can I say object s, this is s object here, dot name, now it's not public, not private, it is protected. Can I say from outside the class, through object, I want to access this. Can I say this object dot name? Is it true or syntax error?
Error.
Right. For protected and private, you cannot access by object. But here, can I say inside the class here, this one, can I say cout name? It's protected here.
Now yes.
Now, yes, yeah. So this is the benefit of protected. Because here, if it's private, you can access by the class. Inside the class, you can access any attribute. So this is private, this is true, but this is wrong. So you have to change as a public or what? Or protected. So this is the benefits of protected here. So protected member and class access. When you say class access, meaning that I want to access this attribute from where? From the class, inside the class, not by object here. Okay. All right. So now protected member access specified like a private but accessible by the derived class. Only the derived class can access protected member, but you see here, but not their objects, meaning that you cannot access from the main. You cannot say object u dot name. Through object, you cannot access protected. This is very important point. Okay, it must be only public. So class access specification determines how private, protected, and public member. So now another question here. If this one is private. And this one is protected here. Can I access now? I change here. This is what we call it. You are making inheritance, but for what? For as a private. So private accessibility. It's not public accessibility. So this is the key idea here. I'll explain how you can access now. So now public, so access specifier. Now in the case of public, this is public here. I mean here, this is public. This is the first one, public. So public will give you permission to access what? So public object of derived class can be treated as an object of base class. So it's very similar to the parent. When you have object of the derived class and you make inheritance as public, so it will be the highest level. You can access all the methods and public attributes only. So in the case of protected, so it's more restrictive now if we change here. Now, if we change here, this one will be protected. So what you can access, in the case of public, you can access what? You can access all public plus all protected, but the private also you cannot access from here inside the class. So now in the case of protected, but this one must be, in our previous example, must be public. Now in the case of protected, so what you can access now, so you can access only public. You cannot access protected, but allow derived to know details of parent. So it's more restricted than in the private one. So this will prevent object of derived class from being treated as object of being class. I think I have to give you a concrete example here to make it clear for you. Okay, now we have to go to the coding part here. We have the coding here. We have the class, which is the student. The parent class is the student here. Then we have the child class. We will call it postgraduate student. Okay, so right now there is no inheritance. They are completely independent. I'll try to put some attributes here. So I have the private section here. I have the name. Okay, I have another attribute, which is the program, which program you are joining here as a student. Then I have the public section here. So I have the constructor here. Okay, so this is the constructor. I will just highlight that the constructor is called. The parent constructor is called, or student constructor called. All right, so I will use another method here, the getter. So I have return back as a string here, get the name. Okay, so I have to return back the name. All right, so I will just to highlight that, can I access the name from this function? So I can say here, access through what? So here, access by student class. Right, so there is no inheritance right now. I just highlight some points here. So now in the main, what I have in the main, I have the student class, sorry, this is student class S object, this is object. So now, can I see here from the main, I want to access these attributes. I will make it public at the beginning. I will make it public here. All right, so can I say S object, student object dot name? So you can access the name. You can see from the main through object. So I want to access through object. So I will say here access by object. This is access by the class, by the parent class. Okay, so now you can execute without any errors, right? What we have here, inline here. Sorry, this is inline. Okay, there is no errors here. What I have here, I have a student class constructor called because I have an object. So this will be executed first. Then I have to write another statement here. I will call what? I will call the function s object dot what dot get the name. Okay, I'll re-execute here. It's quite slow. So execution here. All right, so what we have here, we have the constructor first because we have an object. So this will be executed first. So this is the first line. Then we have access by object. So to make it clear for you, I will give initial value for the name. I will make it name. It is temporary name. Okay, this is initial value. Okay, I will execute here. So what we have here, we have the constructor first. Constructor is called access by object temporary name. This is the name. So access by object. So I will say object.name because it's public, so I can access from outside. Then I will access through what? Through the class. So I can access through the class. Okay, clear this point first without inheritance. How to access through object and how to access through the class. Through the class, you'll call the attribute directly here without object dot. But outside, you have to use the dot. Clear this point before I proceed to the inheritance here. Okay, I assume it's clear for you. So now if I change to private here, so now what's wrong? You cannot access private from here. So if you execute here, this will be wrong here. Okay, it's quite slow. I don't know why. This is the compiler. So I'll re-execute here. Okay, so what's wrong here? We have to show the report. This is the report here. Okay, so you cannot access private. This is wrong. you cannot access from here because the name is private. So if it is protected now, okay, so I'll re-execute here. So it's the same rank here. You cannot access protected or private. It must be public. If public, it will be okay. All right. So now we will go to the child class. So I have to make inheritance. What I have to do, I have to use the colon. Then I have to use the identifier. I will make it first public. So I want to access all methods and attributes in the parent class. So this is the name of the parent class, student. Okay. So now I have the private section here. I have CGBA. I have double here. Okay, so it is the cumulative GPA. I'll make it undergraduate because undergraduate have here. So it is undergraduate student here. Okay, so now undergraduate students, what it has? It has what? It has the name program plus. So there is no need to repeat these attributes because you have the inheritance here. Okay, so I have a functions here. So I will implement the public section here. I have the constructor first. So it's undergraduate here. So I will say here, see out what undergraduate class called undergraduate constructor called. So it is undergraduate constructor called. All right, so I have function here. I'll use the same function here, but through the class, I will get name by the child. So I'll make it different from the parent class because already you have this function. So you have to change the name here. So this is the child. Okay, so this is the child class here. Accessed by the child. Okay, so what I want to access the name here. So the name where in the parent class. So I have to create an object of this class. So I have undergraduate student object here. So I will repeat the same here. So access by student object here, access by undergraduate student. Okay, so this is undergraduate here, and this is undergraduate here. So I want to access the method here. The method is public. Access by object here. So this is accessed by the class from here. All right, so now, because here you cannot access protected, so I will deactivate this one, temporary. So I will access through the class. Okay, so what we have here. So now what you see here, first the constructor, you can see here, student constructor called 2 times. Why? Where is the constructor here for undergraduate constructor? So you have, this is the constructor here, undergraduate object here. Okay, so this is the constructor. I'll re-execute here. So we have object undergraduate object 1 and 2. So what you see here, what's wrong here? Give the name undergraduate object 1. Okay. So you see first the parent class called 3 times. Why? The constructor, I mean the constructor, because this one is what? This one is public, so this one will not be called. This one will be called directly. So this is the first point you have to notice. The constructor of the parent class will be called. So for the child class, the constructor will not be called. So if you don't have inheritance here, so you see now, without inheritance, you can see the constructor without this line. I will make C out for this one, just to highlight the point of the constructor. This one should be double here. Okay, so now give the name. Okay, so we have 2 classes. They are completely separate. So the first class is the student class. So we have the student constructor called. Here we have a problem with the constructor of the undergraduate here. Just to make sure there is no spelling error here. We have spelling error here. So we have I don't know why it's quite slow. Okay, I'll close all here. I'll execute here. So what you see here, so we have the student constructor is called because we have an object here. Then we have 2 objects here. We have object 1, object 2. So we have calling the constructor 2 times. These are the functions here. Now I have to return back to the inheritance. So this is public here. We'll make inheritance for the student class. So now what you can see, so now the student constructor called the first time because we have object here. Then we have another object here. So what we are calling? We are calling first the parent class because it's inheritance. So it will call all the functions there. So it will be called for the second time because we have the child class plus we have the constructor of the child class. So 2 constructors are called. First, the parent class, then the child class. This is for object 1. For object 2 here, we have the parent constructor plus the child constructor. Okay, so this is the first point about the constructor. The constructor will be called. So now we have the access now from here. We have to return back as a string here. So this is the name here. So I have to return back the name. Okay, we have to execute now. So after calling the constructor, we have to print out the name from the child class and from the parent class. Okay, so this is from the child class. You can access because it is protected here. If private, so now you cannot access from here. So it's private now. You see, you cannot access. You see the error here. What's the error here? It's private. You cannot access from the child class. Okay, this point clear? It must be protected or public. But again here, protected here, you cannot access through object here. So this is protected now. I want to access through student object. So this is student object here. Can I access the name? It's protected. You cannot access here. You see, you cannot access because it's protected. Must be called only from the class. Okay, this point clear for you, the concept of the protected now. In the case of public, I will change later. I will highlight other points about this one when we change to protected or public. Right now, clear for you when you have the public accessibility, the inheritance. You cannot access through object. You can access only from the class. From here or here. Here you can access even if this is private. You cannot access from the same class. So you can access from the same class. But from the child class, this one should be protected or public. So you can access from here. But by object, you cannot access. Clear this point? Any question before I move back to the slides to explain what's happening when we change this one? Clear this point to access through object and access from the class. All right, so we return back to the slides here. Okay, so we have the first type of access specifier. We have the public here. Object of derived can be treated as an object. So I think we have to explain later. So we have the inheritance and class access specifier. So members access be specified at two ways. Inside each class, as I have mentioned, it's called by the class, or when derived class extends, you can call it from the parent class or from the inherited class or the extended class. Okay, so now we have the class access specifier. So we are relating back to the code. So we need to discard here. When you say class access specifier, we are talking about what? We are talking about this one. This one is class access specifier, and this one, and this one, and this one. But this one is what we call it. We call it inheritance specifier. So you see here, This one, we make it public. So this is inheritance specifier. So now this one, we make it public. Which one? So you discard here. This one. This one, which will link the child with the parent. So we make it public. So what happens if we change this one? Okay, so now you can differentiate between the class access specifier, which comes inside the class, and the inheritance specifier, which comes here after the colon. So now you can see this is the class access specifier. These are the class access specifier, and this is the inheritance specifier, this one. So what happened if this one changed? We already discussed this one. When this one is protected, when this one is public, you can access from the child class. But if this one change, what will happen here? So this is the class, is the inheritance. So now this one, after the colon here, I have private. So this is the base class, and this is the derived class. So now when you have private attribute here, and you have this one is private, so what will happen with X? X is inaccessible. Even this one is private or protected, so also you cannot access X because X is what? Is private or public. You cannot access to. Okay, I have to repeat this point. Now, in the parent class, I have attribute X here. Okay, this is X in the parent class, but X is what? Is private. And in between here, in the inheritance, after the colon, this one is private. This is in the child. You cannot access from the child. If you change this one to be protected, I'm changing here in the inheritance access, in inheritance accessibility. So also you cannot access. If you change to public, public is the same example that we have used, you cannot access. You see in the coding here, if this one is private, this one is private. So you cannot access the name because the name here is private. So when you execute here, you cannot access. If you change this one to protected, so it is protected here, also you cannot access. Sorry. If you change this one to public, also you cannot access. Clear this point because it's private. Private, whatever this one, it's still private. Clear this point about the private? So now about the private one. So we come to the protected one. So in the protected case, so now I have variable y. And this one is private after the colon. So what happened with y? Y will be what? Will be accessible as a private. So it's here protected in the parent class, but the child will see y as a private. So we will try to implement this one. Now we have this one is private. Okay, so this is private here. And this one is protected here. So now can I access the name from here? I'll try to execute now. This is protected and this is private here. So I want to access the name from here. So you see here, you cannot access because it will be treated as private here. So if you see the error here, it will become private. I have to deactivate this one. You cannot access by object. Of course, you can access from the class, but I want to deactivate the object. So now you can access the. All right, so this is protected and this is private. You can access from where? From the class only. You cannot access outside the class. So this is the second scenario. Okay, we have the third scenario here. When Z is public and this one is private here. So how you see it, Z? Z will be, because of this one is private, so automatically Z will be converted to private, meaning that this one is public now, and this one is private. So it will apply the lowest one. This is public and this is private, so private will be applied here. So now you can access from here without any problems. It's very similar to the protected one. But what? But you cannot access from here through object. So see, there will be error. Okay, because what? Because this is private, this is public, so the lowest will be applied. So it will be private. Okay, clear this point now. You have the class accessibility plus the inheritance accessibility. So the lowest will be applied here. Okay, this point clear? It will be private. We have public, sorry. We have public here in the parent class. We have the inheritance here as a private, so it will be private here. You cannot access outside the class. So now in the second scenario here, when we change here to protected. So what happened with the private one? The private one all the time will be private. So private with protected, so this will be private. So it cannot be accessed. Sorry. So protected with protected member with protected inheritance. So what we have? Protected. We have public with protected, so the lowest will be applied, so it will be protected. So now this is public, this is protected. We will change here. This is protected here. This is public. So you'll see here as protected, the lowest will be applied. So can you access the protected member from outside the class by object? So you cannot access, only public. Okay, clear this point? You have two different levels of permissions, so the lowest will be applied. So now this is protected, you cannot access outside the class. So what we have here, the third scenario, when this one is public, so this is the highest level of permission. Public with private, so private will be applied here, so you cannot access. Okay, so now we have protected here with public, so protected will be here. We have public with public, so it will be public only. Clear this point? When you change the accessibility with the inheritance, how you see these attributes from the child class. So now we will apply the second one here, discard. If this one is what? This one is protected here, and this one is public. So you cannot access outside through object. You cannot access here. You can access only through the class. Okay, clear this point? When we change the accessibility between the derived and the public, when you change this one and this one. So always you will take the lowest. This is the rule. Okay. I think the last topic we have to talk about. So an object owns all members from the class. It was created from the private, public. So meaning that you can access all from the child class. You can access all these members. However, the object can only access the public. So this is the main point here. From the main, you cannot access protected or private. From the class only, you can access class only. So you see this point. Class can access all its own member. From the same class here, from the same class here, I'm inside the class. So I can access private also. So if this is private, I can access from the class, but I cannot access from the child. It should be what? It should be protected here. Okay, clear this point here. Class can access all its own members. Other object can only access public. This is the main point. You can access from the main program only the public members. Okay, so this is the same example we have applied here. We just highlight here. So you can see now I have the student object here. I have the undergraduate object here. It's the same example we have applied. So now for the, I have the name. So this is the name, is private. So the inheritance here is public. So now for the name from the class, you can access the name, you can access the program, even it's private. You can access this function, but you cannot access this one in the child. So you cannot access this member or this function. Meaning that in this code, if you change the calling here, can I say here, I will print out the name and what? The cumulative GPA. Can I access this one? Even this one is public. Okay, so you see here, you cannot access, even it's public, because the parent cannot see the child. It's the opposite. The child can see the parent. Clear this point? Why this you cannot access from here? So you cannot access from the parent class, even if this one is public. Okay, you cannot access from the class. But if you have object here, object S, Can you access this one? Is public here? So you see, cannot access through object, meaning that you cannot say here this one access through object. You cannot say here student object dot cgba. This is wrong. Even this is public. Sorry, we have the name here. We make it public here. So you see here, you cannot access this member even if it is public, because this one is independent. This the parent class is independent from the child class here. Okay, clear this point. You cannot access members or functions here from the parent. So this is not accessible here. But for the class, undergraduate class here, you can access the name from the class. Now this is public. It's not accessibility, it's ownership here. Meaning that when you create this object here, or this class here, so already you own these attributes, but you cannot access private. Accessibility will come first, meaning that you own all members. So the class will own all the members. Also the object here, its ownership here will own the class. But the opposite here, you cannot say the object owns these attributes or functions. The accessibility comes here. Now, for the student class can access the name, can access the program, access the name, access the program, access this function also can, but cannot access these members here. This is accessibility here. Okay. So for this class, because this one is private, so you cannot access. But you can access what? You can access print function because it's public here. You can access your own attributes, so it's true. So we have here the object as here. It is object of this class. So this one cannot access because this is private. So even by object from the main, you cannot access the private member. You can access only the public one. Okay, clear this point, the accessibility. If you have object U, so object U now can access what? Can access only the public members. So if we change to protected here, if we change this one to be protected, now you can access from the class only. You cannot access from the object. Clear this point. This is the end for today. Next class we will continue. Any question about this relationship between the superclass and the derived class? Any question before I end today's lecture? Okay, I assume it's clear for you, so I have to stop my sharing here.